Next installment of our visits to different parts of ORCAA's jurisdiction that we've been doing for, I think we started in early this year. And so with each presentation, we focus on ORCAA's work in that county or the cities in that county and some of the things that we do there and some of what makes that county unique in terms of the air quality concerns, monitoring other things. And again, it's an opportunity for us to work a little bit more closely with you as board members, get a chance for you to get to know more about ORCAA's work in your county or city and so on. So this month, Pacific County. So Dan, if you could show the slides, please.
And do I need to switch screens?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. We're seeing. Okay. All right. There we go. Yep. So next slide, please. All right. So everyone's familiar with the map of ORCAA's jurisdiction. So of course, Pacific County is our southernmost county. So next slide, please. So I'm going to transition to Dan, but actually, yeah, hit one more. Click, please. A lot of water. This was an interesting factoid that Dan had dug up. I didn't realize that Pacific County was actually created before the Washington Territory was created. So, so Dan, let me turn this over to you. I think if you want to talk a little bit about the county, and then maybe to Dave, anything you'd like to share about your county.
Sure. So I will note I do have a degree in history. So this was a really good reminder of me of some of the things I explored during my college career. Pacific County was part of the Oregon Territory when that extended from the 54th parallel down to California border. It was split out when Washington Territory was formed. Pacific County went to Washington Territory, but it was still the first official county in Washington Territory, I believe. So, and then the other interesting fact that I don't know that anybody outside of Pacific County knows, but there was actually a bit of a civil war in the county where I think it was, let me look at my notes, in 1852, Oysterville was the county seat, but the residents of South Bend paddled across Willapa Bay, stole the county records, and took them back to South Bend and set themselves up as the county seat.
You know, we actually have a similar story in Fallon County where that same thing happened between Dungeness and Port Angeles. So apparently it wasn't that uncommon.
Feats of strength.
Yeah, feats of strength.
Both boxes of files.
So
Yeah.
Pacific County is our least populated county, but it has the designation as having the longest beach in the continuous continental U.S. So it may be the longest continuous beach in all 50 states. It's a 28-mile stretch of sand up the Long Beach Peninsula. So, Dave, anything you would like to add to that?
I do. And you've hit on a few things. I'm going to talk about our population. We have 4 cities in Pacific County. The largest is Raymond, followed by Long Beach and South Bend. They're pretty close in size, and then Oahu is our smallest city. Pacific County is named for the Pacific Ocean. Surprise, surprise. The county's boundaries have not changed since its creation, although with everything in Wahkiakum County right now, that certainly could change down the road. And it is the only Pacific County in the United States. No other Pacific counties. Let's see, he talked about the beach. Pacific County is also known for being the graveyard of the Pacific because of the treacherous waters along the Long Beach Peninsula and certainly at the mouth of the Columbia. If you want to see all the ships that have sunk along that stretch of territory, we have lots of maps in Pacific County. Seafood production, especially shellfish and tourism, are 2 of our major industries. we are working real hard to try and keep the timber industry going as well. Running into some challenges with that, but we're gonna continue that fight. Lots of cranberry farming, a lot of historic maritime tales as well. Economically, in 2024, the average annual wage was $50,000. So, not a huge amount. And I thought maybe I'd add a little bit to the story that we started out with about the county seat. So in the first decade of Pacific County, it was pretty mobile. It started out in Pacific City, which is southwest of what is today Owaco. It was then transferred to Chinookville, so Chinook. And 2 years later, the residents of Oysterville petitioned the county commissioners for the transfer of the county seat. There was an election that happened, and that move was sanctioned, so it moved to Oysterville. Now, about 40 years later, in 1892, our population center had shifted from kind of the west side of the county over to the east side. The Northern Pacific Railroad put in a spur line connecting South Bend and the main rail in Chehalis. And the railroad's interest in some of the industry that South Bend had created a real land boom in Pacific County. 1889, the Owaco Railroad and Steam Navigation Company completed a railroad from Owaco to Nakata. Nakata is just a little bit south of Oysterville. And so now Oysterville was kind of off the beaten track, and Pacific County residents considered moving the county again. There was an election in November of 1892. 3 cities vied for the county seat: Oysterville, Sealand, which is now part of Nakata, and South Bend. South Bend, of course, had the advantage population-wise. And after the campaign, South Bend, with 984 votes, won the county seat. However, the people of Oysterville were not really excited about relinquishing that county seat. And so the residents in South Bend nominated a committee to develop a plan to take the county government by force.
Even though they won the election.
Yes, yes. And so on a Sunday morning in February, 85 men from South Bend boarded their ships to sail across the Willapa Bay. On arrival, what they discovered was that the bay was too shallow for their ships to land. So they unloaded into smaller boats for landing, and they walked the rest of the way to Oysterville. They marched through town, took possession of the courthouse. The county clerk at the time opened his office, played nice, was allowing the removal of county records and so on and so forth, and most other county officials cooperated. However, there was one county auditor, Phil Barney, who thought the Oyster villains, as they were called, were, and so they weren't happy, but no violence had yet occurred. Well, Auditor Barney was reportedly picked up a chair leg and threatened one of the South Bend folks over there. Fortunately, calmer heads prevailed and violence was avoided. The materials were transported back to South Bend, and that is how South Bend became the county seat of Pacific County. And it's been there ever since. No more hospitality. So just, a little bit about the county, a little bit about the history, so on and so forth. So there you go.
Yes, thanks, Dave.
All right.
And I will also note, I forgot to add that Pacific County was the western terminus of Lewis and Clark's Corps of Discovery. They landed it at what they named Cape Disappointment because of those Pacific storms and nastiness that creates that graveyard of the Pacific that they've talked about. They did ferry south of the Columbia to Oregon to winter, but the true end of their journey was Pacific County, Cape Disappointment, just south of or near Oahu.
Cape Disappointment today is home to one of the largest state parks in the state. And it's under some renovations right now. We'll open back up in the spring for camping and so on and so forth.
There's a beautiful interpretive center up on the hill there too, with the lighthouse, and tells you a whole lot more about the shipwrecks and
Yeah.
whatnot,
Yeah.
and great place to visit.
And if you're a birder, a great
And the
brown
Coast Guard
or
has
brown
their-
pelican rookery.
Yeah, their motor lifeboat school out
Well, if you
there.
like biscuits, they have the biscuit company thing there on
They
them.
do?
That's why I go for. I was there for Thanksgiving this year. I run away every 4 years. We do no in-laws, no outlaws, no nothing. We just run away, and we were there.
Yeah.
We drove across though for pancake and Astoria.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite place.
All right. So we're all enriched by
Yeah.
more history about, so now on to monitoring.
I mean, Armand, did you want to say anything about this photo, Mike?
Oh, it's just a beautiful view of South Bend. It's always that way, even the day I went down there. And
Always looks like
it's
it.
from my old,
This morning.
it's from my old roof, actually, looking, and it's the same view the other way. And the courthouse they're talking about is just a block up the hill from that.
Okay,
And it's one of the great courthouses.
It is,
It's beautiful,
Really.
historic courthouse.
Smaller version of the Capitol here with the dome and all the stained glass and art. People will drive places just to get married in front of it.
Oh.
It's really neat when if you get a chance to go there. It's beautiful inside the rotunda.
okay. Next slide. So history of air monitoring in Pacific County is fairly short compared to some of our other counties. There was some monitoring done through the 70s and 80s. So the total suspended particulate, high volume sampler, the big sampler, PM10, old school, I don't believe that was run by ORCAA. I think that was run by the state or the Departments of Health. ORCAA did not maintain monitoring in Pacific County until 2006. We installed a monitor at Raymond High School. It's the PM 2.5 nephelometer data that you guys are all familiar with. Mike actually helped, since he lived there, he was trained on how to run that site. That site, I would also like to say, ORCAA supported completely. That was not supported by the state of ecology at all. That was something that in 2006, Rich or Fran? Rich decided that we needed at least one monitoring site in every county, and the state said, well, Pacific County doesn't have any air quality problems and the population is really low, and we just aren't gonna support that. But Rich, our executive director at the time, thought that was really important. And then one other note I just want to add there is that the data logger at that site, up until quite recently, which I'll get to, was an old 8816 analog data logger, which means nothing to you. I know it dates back to like 1983 or 84, and probably, I don't have any evidence for this, but I am guessing was the last operational 8816 data logger in the country. I mean, it was old. So, and Mike can attest to
It
that.
was very old.
Very old, very, very analog, very
Yeah,
old school
yes.
looking. In 2015, we lost the Raymond High School site. I think they were doing construction there. And so we had to move, and so Mike found us a place at the South Bend School, and so we were there for 4 years, and then they decided to do construction. So Mike found us a place at Raymond PB Facilities. He has all the connects down there, and so now we are back in Raymond, but we're at the PUD building, which has been a great building. And then I just want to add here, in 2023, the state had continued to update their data collection system, and they finally updated it to the point where our 8816 data logger just would not communicate with their system. And we kind of forced their hand, and so they agreed to purchase the license for the modern upgraded data logger that we had at all the other sites, and agreed to help us support the Raymond site. So it is now supported by Ecology, which is great. And we have it all modernized with the new data logger. And then in 2025, we added, as part of our Senswa project, which I've mentioned before, we added our third Senswa installation at the Ilwaco Hilltop Middle School. So that's been operational since then. Okay, next slide.
Odell,
Yes,
before the internet or having these things networked, do we have to go to them all the time?
yes.
Like weekly,
We
monthly?
called that milking the data.
Okay.
And Mike remembers that.
There was a computer that was probably this big, a portable one in the old days with the battery being as big as this, and we'd have to plug it in and download the data, and yeah,
You
that's how
didn't
you.
do it
you-
regularly, you just lose
You
the
lose the
data.
data.
And it was a very hyper terminal type. You kind of had to parse the data yourself and figure out which was what, because it would just come as a stream. And
Yeah,
it was, I did that once as Jimmy's intern, and it was like, oh, I'm gonna screw something up here.
yeah, I screwed up many of those, and I had to call Jimmy and say, how do I fix this? Get this. Because yeah, it was very archaic, and you got one shot to download it right. You know, if you push the wrong button,
You
wait.
just delete all the
And I
data.
think the laptop's an anchor for a boat out there right now.
Thank you.
Anyway, so this is our tile slide, so you can kind of see the history of air monitoring in Pacific County. Mostly good, a few moderate, don't see that clear, at a lot of our other sites, you'll see a clear improvement in air quality going back in time, and Pacific County, it's pretty much always been good, which is why ecology was like, we're not doing that. But you will notice that as we start seeing those wildfire incidents that we see at the other sites, we did see those in Pacific County as well. And so those are starting to pop up in 2017. You'll also see a lot of gray sites. Pacific County loses power a lot.
Now we're at the PUD, maybe they won't
Or,
there.
yeah, they lose power a lot. It took us a while to find the South Bend school, so you'll see we lost a lot of data that year. And then the move back, we did that a little more planned. It was a little better. I'm not sure what happened in 2023. Again, that could be the site upgrade, moving from the data logger, and maybe that's when the 88.6, actually, that's when the 8816 stopped communicating, and we had to bargain with ecology to get the new data logger. So that is air quality history in Pacific County.
Can I
Next
ask
slide.
a question on that before
Yes.
we move on? Just, it looks, I mean, I see the kind of the wood stove season there with the moderates, and it seems like it's going down though as you go through time. Is that something that?
And it's just more dramatic at our other sites. It's
Okay.
not as dramatic in Pacific County. So yeah, I think the air quality has improved, but it's just not as a dramatic as we've seen, where in the other, like, which sites have we done? Jefferson we did, and Mason County, you see it kind of move from oranges and dark yellows to mostly greens and yellows at the bottom. So it's just not as dramatic.
But also some of those locations are in funnels at the end of funnels, like in Belfair and stuff like that. It's gonna sit some of
Yeah.
that stuff where theirs is a lot more.
We did a lot
more
of-
air.
A lot of flushing with the wind blowing off the coast, blowing
Yeah.
through there, so.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised by the fire popping like that
Mhm.
so often with how much wind they have.
Well, I think that particular one was a big stagnant mass that just kind of sat over the entire state for several days
Yeah.
that year. It was pretty bad.
When was the heat dome?
June 2021.
So that one didn't really.
Didn't really pop. I don't think Raymond was that affected. They didn't get up until 113 degrees.
Right.
Make it to 85, which.
They are well named Pacific County. The Pacific keeps them very cool. Okay, next slide. And then this slide came out of our Grace Harbor presentation. Some of the county commissioners asked, well, how does Grace Harbor compare to other, when we take this to the Board of Health, or when we've done that secondary presentation, I got the question, how does Grace Harbor compare to the rest of the state? And so I thought I would add this slide in. So the black bold line is the Raymond South Bend sites combined. And you'll see that it's kind of there with most of our sites. And then just to compare with Seattle, Tacoma, and Spokane, you'll see those are much higher. That 20, this is design values. So real quick, a design value is the 98th highest day. So this is a 24-hour average, averaged over 3 years. So when you get a real bad wildfire smoke year like we did in 2020, it takes 3 years for that to drop out of the 3-year average. And so that's actually how the federal government determines if you're meeting the 24-hour national standard. They take your 98 highest, just, you know, to get rid of those really high days that you just feel one-off. And then they average that over 3 years. So if you go above that solid gray line, then that would mean you're not meeting your national ambient air quality standard. This is including wildfire smoke, so I want to throw that out there that all of these counties or cities would have filed an exceptional event for those data, which would have brought it down so that they're probably still meeting the national ambient air quality standard, because you can get data thrown out for an exceptional event for this purpose. So that's just wanted to show how Raymond kind of compared with the rest of our sites and then the 3 biggest cities in that state. And that's all I've got, unless there are any questions.
Pretty good air quality.
Yeah, they do have really good.
God's country, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Come visit.
Okay, moving on to smoke issues. As with all of our counties, indoor burning, wood stove use is a primary concern this time of year during the home heating season. We also have wildfire events and outdoor burning concerns. But on the indoor burning, wood stove use is still popular. There's upwards of 11 to 15% of the population in Pacific County reports wood as a primary heat source. We have not had a robust change-out program in Pacific County until the last cycle, so 23, 25. We were able to extend the recycle award to them, and the same goes this cycle. Unfortunately, we can't do the replacement program there. The state says the air quality is too good. They're not at risk of violating the standard, so they wanted to reserve funds for areas that had higher probability of exceeding the standards. So Pacific County, though, does qualify for our recycle award, so $500 to get rid of an old uncertified wood stove. And uncertified means it does not meet the 2020 standards, the EPA standards. So pretty much any old stove out there qualifies, and folks can use that $500 for replacing with a new wood stove or other heating devices, or taking a trip or going out to dinner, whatever they want. We don't put qualifications on what that is. We just want to see that wood stove taken to a metal scrapper and recycled. On the wildfire events, Odell mentioned that Pacific County doesn't get a huge impact, but I think that 2020, if I remember correctly, there was some offshore winds, some east winds that year that brought smoke out of, that had pooled into the Puget Sound area and brought that down the Columbia and around the south side of the Olympics, and that's maybe why we saw that purple AQI ratings that year. But fortunately,
Dan?
Pacific County is pretty well protected with onshore winds from the Pacific, so they don't
Dan?
see as many impacts from wildfire events.
Dan, I just want to add that smoke event, the smoke went hundreds of miles out over the Pacific Ocean. So even after the wind switched and came back as westerly, it continued to impact air quality
Okay.
until that cleared out.
So that was the event, the big plume settled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tar burning.
Okay. And then getting into outdoor burning, I'm going to turn that over to Mike.
Well, the picture there's a good example of outdoor burning. That actually is the DNR / burn would be my guess. The outdoor burning issues, of course, as we talked about, come from smoke, and you get it from DNR silviculture burns, you get it from land clearing burns that we permit, residential yard waste burns that go without a permit that we're maybe doing notifications on. And then even recreational fires have impacts if people don't burn a clean hot fire. So all those impacts occur in Pacific County just like everywhere else. So next slide, please.
He's.
Okay.
Oh, he's ahead of me. Okay, residential burning, as we talked about with all the other counties, you can do it outside the urban growth areas, you can do it outside the cities. And we don't require permits for that, other than in Thurston County, we have the notification in Cleary. Ocean Park Fire District, or Fire District number 1 is what they're called, but locals know it as Ocean Park Fire District. They issue their own permits. We've got one of those agreements we've talked about in the past, where they do their own land clearing permits and they do some residential permits and they handle complaints for us. There's no other fire districts in Pacific County who do residential permits or land clearing. We do all the rest. Again, in the cities of Oahu, Long Beach, Raymond, South Bend, and Seaview, which is a historic district, has their own special things. Those are areas you cannot have anything but a campfire. Those are basically your UGA, city UGA, only campfires are allowed. As you can see in this picture, they're burning some lumber there, so that would not be appropriate. You can only burn natural vegetation. Even clean lumber is not allowed to be burned by the state WAC and ORCAA rules. So we're showing you what you shouldn't be burning there. And then, anytime the fire marshal or the city or county commissioners or city leaders ban it in their area for summer burn ban, just like everywhere else, we'll go ahead, ORCAA will ban those and not issue permits. And Dan does a great job putting out information, so they quit doing that. So that's it with that slide. If you want to jump to the next one, we're going to jump into asbestos. And again, some of this, as we've talked about in the other counties, it's all similar. But the asbestos there is, we're required, by not only ORCAA rules, but also there's some federal NESHAP rules that talk about when you need a asbestos permit and what you can do with asbestos. We don't get a lot of notifications down there. We don't call them permits. They notify us and then we look at them, similar to what we want to do with the land clearing burn stuff. So in the fiscal year 2025, we had 17 asbestos notifications and 21 demo notifications in Pacific County. This is my chance to wedge in there that there's probably more renovations going on than that, and there's probably more old buildings with asbestos. So we work a lot with the county. I've talked to Sean Humphrey, Randy Aaron, and you'll see them later in a picture, and other cities and stuff, Long Beach and whatnot, to educate their people and to let them know that if they're doing a renovation, they should have the materials tested. And that's the requirement of ORCAA rules and of the NESHAP, the federal rules, that if you're going to demolish anything over 120 square feet, you need and that means a standing load bearing wall, you would need a notification to ORCAA, even if the cities or counties require one. And I just know Pacific County doesn't, but in other regions, the counties and cities require them, and ORCAA does. So there's two of them. Look at different things. ORCAA uses that to look at asbestos. So if there's any suspect material, if you're going to remove out of a wall, like a renovation, like these walls, you have to have it tested for asbestos, no matter what year it was put in. A lot of people are confused that, hey, I put it in 20 years ago, it doesn't have asbestos. It probably doesn't, but the federal rules and the ORCAA rules say you still have to have it tested. So, and then if there's any material that tests positive for asbestos and it's over 48 square feet, basically bigger than a door or a window, you need to submit a notification to ORCAA for that. So again, 21 demos, 17 asbestos. Pacific County is a big area, and get out into the nacelles and the Menlos and stuff. We don't see a lot of that, but hopefully word will get out. People know we don't want people being exposed to asbestos. It's not a good thing. So that's my spiel on asbestos. Next, working with the businesses. We have 41 registered sources, which to me, I think is a lot for a little county with the population being as small as one AOP. That's the large stuff. And of course, that's a Weyerhaeuser, Title V, AOP, 32 inspections. So we inspected almost all the sources there in this fiscal year of 2025. And there are some that we do every 2 years. So that's where there's a difference. The 9 that we didn't get, I'm sure we'll get this year. Emission inventory, we've talked about that from the other counties. Some of them have several sources we get in, because I think we get about 70 some emission inventory sources, but in Pacific County, they're all pretty small except for Weyerhaeuser. So we get emission reports from Weyerhaeuser. Some of the other things we require NSR permits, new source review permits for, would be the gas stations, paint booths, wastewater plants down in Long Beach, backup generators that are large, composters. As Dave talked about, seafood processors, because a lot of them have boilers. Most of them have boilers to cook stuff in hot water, and the boilers are large enough that they require inspections. And believe it or not, we inspect crematories, and there's 2 of them there. There's one in Raymond and then one down in Long Beach. So those are just of what we inspect, and those are what make up the 32 for that county. The next picture and the last one for me is you can see, that's the inspection of Weyerhaeuser. I mean, the trees probably give it away. We did the walkthrough. That was our emphasis. It's very interesting how they take those logs and get every little inch possible of lumber out of those suckers with lasers and self-guided. You basically have to be a gamer these days to manipulate it more than a millwright. And so we did our walkthrough there, going from left to right. You got Rob Wyland, he's our, he was the lead inspector here on the Title V, and he's the inspection supervisor. Next to him in the orange hat is Christina Yannick, she's the environmental person for Weyerhaeuser. Then you can see our fearless leader next to the right, looking up the road there. Probably seeing what's coming, in case we get hit by a truck or something, keeping us safe. And then after that, oh my.
That's Aiden.
Oh, thank you, Aiden and Aaron. My eyes are close, Aiden and Aaron. And then the blue hat in the back, that's actually Sean Humphreys. He's the DCD director down there. And Dave's kind of half hidden. He's the next blue hat over there, but our fearless leader was there checking it all in. And then the yellow hat, that's Randy Urin. He's the Pacific County, I think deputy fire marshal and also building official. And then I don't remember the name of the last guy in the orange hat. He's a Weyerhaeuser guy that helped us on the inspection. So that it was really nice to do that. There's a lot that goes on at mills that people don't think about with all the bag houses, the ESP, the control stuff. They test every year. Lots of emissions. That's why they're on the emission inventory.
And
One
Mike,
thing
you
I'll-
forgot to mention that upper right is your finger covering part of the camera lens.
Oh. Well, I'm surprised it's only that much. I thought it'd be more if you look at my personal photo.
I cropped it out.
So one thing I'll mention is that Weyerhaeuser is making a lot of investments in this mill. We've recently permitted continuous dry kilns there, which is, I think, the first in the state, right,
The
Mike?
first one in the state powered by the biofuel. Yeah, they're gonna use their wood products to do a boiler that then, yeah. So yeah, the first one like that. There's one other one, but it's fired differently up north. Yeah, and it's gonna be cool. They're building it, and as we speak, I see all the lights, and it's gonna totally change the layout there and be a lot more efficient for them.
Yeah, so nice that Weyerhaeuser is making
Yeah.
those big capital investments in the facility.
The community always is nervous if a big employer pulls, and they won't pull out if they're getting that kind of money, so.
They're pretty committed. They
They
have
are.
over 200 employees at that site. And that's why we're super concerned about different timber industry.
Yeah,
Largest private employer?
yeah, I think,
Pretty close.
I was gonna say, I think I heard that out private, they are the highest private, the biggest private one, is what I heard. Yeah, they're committed. I tell you, they do a really good job in the community, Raymond, South Bend, especially the north end, of putting money into the causes there. And they do a lot of good internships for the college students in the summer. I mean, they're a great, a business that really puts back to the community there. And they've been there for over 100 years. I don't know how long, but they've been there a long, long time. Cause I think they were somewhere in the 20s or 30s is where it may not have been exactly Weyerhaeuser, but that's when the mill was started in that area, and then it's just grown, and at some point the Weyerhaeuser bought it, but it's been there for a long, long time. And actually the last mill, I think, in the town, in the Pacific County operating now of any size. We had a couple others that the county owned on the port, but they have closed, and I can't think of anyone else. So I think that's the last lumber mill in town. And there used to be them all over the water. Used to be probably 20 of them going.
Cool. All right, so that's our focus on Pacific County.